Good morning and welcome to the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber's Let's Talk Water webinar. We decided to have this webinar because there is a problem in the metro and we are looking for solutions. And we have a number of guests and experts in the field of water who are going to be talking to us. And I'd like to just start off by saying if you have a question or a comment at any time during the presentations, please could you post it on the live chats or even on any platform that you're on, because we are on various platforms on this webinar. And the questions will be brought through to us, and then we can ask the relevant presenter to answer the questions. In the event that we are not able to get through to all the questions in terms of answering because of time, we will still take the questions and have them answered and sent through to you. But before I start, I just wanted to share something that struck me as I was thinking about this webinar, that about 10 years ago, when Dave Powell was the MD of VW South Africa, he was also at the same time the chairman of NACAM, which is the industry body. On this day, they had a meeting with the president of the country, and the president asked him, the then president, that was about 10 years ago. So the president asked him, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing your businesses today and also into the future? Without flinching and without missing a beat, he said water. And everyone in the meeting was looking around and thinking, why would you say that? And he explained why he said that. So this problem is not a new problem. This is a problem that some people foresaw 10 years ago. And as things go, we just need to look at solutions. That's the reason why we are here today. We're looking at how it is that we can save our city and make sure that we do not have a water problem going forward. And on that note, I'd like to welcome the president of the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber, Dr. Andrew Myo, who's going to give us the opening remarks. Over to you, Dr. Myo.
Thank you, and good morning and welcome to our distinguished speakers and all participants of this webinar. South Africa, as Nomkhita has just underscored, is a water scarce country. More recently, the Nelson Mandela Bay region has been under threat from dwindling dam levels. The business sector is aware of the negative impact a lack of water has over our economy. This morning's conversation is important to businesses as well as to all the citizens of our Bay. Globally and within the country, solutions exist to alleviate effects of water shortages. The Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber wishes to highlight the contribution by the private sector through innovation and responsible water usage. We present this platform as an opportunity for the participants to fully engage with the information to be shared this morning. I invite you all to actively participate in the discussions that will in some way influence the future of the water situation in our metro. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for that hard-hitting kind of overarching commentary on what the problems are. But what I like about what you've just said is that you're saying this platform is designed by the Business Chamber so that all participants can fully engage towards looking for solutions. So that's the only reason we are here. We're looking at how it is that we can get solutions for the city. And there's going to be a very little or no commentary from my part, because we'd really like to use the time as effectively as possible to learn from the people who are dealing with the water issues. And therefore, at the end of each presentation by any speaker, we won't pause for questions and answers. We will take questions and answers at the end for everybody. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome on the panel and ask Mr. Barry Martin, the head of water in the Bay, to take us through status quo, what they've done, what they still need to do, and anything else that you'd like to share with us, Barry. please feel free to do so. The platform is yours for the next 20 minutes. Thank you.
The screen up? Okay, sorry about that. Good morning, everybody. I'm Barry Martin, responsible for water and sanitation in the Metro. And this is a status quo of where we're finding ourselves as a Metro in the water. Those are the six topics that I'll discuss briefly. Just to give an indication of where our water comes from, the routes are coming from. For the municipality's point of view, there are two main supplies of water, is Churchill in Porfu and the Nooit Gedacht. And then we get water and allocation from the Koga-Luri system. The Sand and Bulk River is an old 100-year system that's running, and there's a dedicated supply from the Groendal Dam to Uitenhage and some groundwater from springs. And those are the volumes of the dams at those locations that I refer to. I didn't indicate the dams of the bulk and sand because they are quite small in comparison. Just to bring up to speed of what the water situation is currently. Last week, Wednesday, it was about 18.4%. The dam level yesterday, average dam levels are 21.62%. And you can see that the Koga has climbed above the 8% mark where it was. The Churchill was at 52% and it's climbed up by 10% virtually up there. In Porfu was sitting at 18% and Groendal was sitting down at about 25%. So there's been some inflow of the two weekends of rain that we actually had. What is that significance? Last year, in October 2018, when we had that good rains, the dams went up to 54%. And I just want to show you that 2 years ago, that is the kind of rain of above 200 millimeter in one rainfall event that has caused the dams to climb so rapidly. There was a small rainfall event in November last year, but it just indicates to you, this is the 20-year average at the Churchill Dam. And this is just an enlargement of that same period. And we track these hollow bars a year are the 20-year average rainfall that is there. And the solid ones of a year, this is the actual rainfall that has happened. So if you look at the period from July 2017 to August 2020, there's been 3, 6, 7, 8 times that's been above the 20-year average rainfall. And the most significant one above the 20-year average rainfall was September 2018 and one last year, one that happened now recently. And we have to add the most recent one up here. So it just shows you that we have had below average rainfall over the last couple of years. And that is one of the big factors why our dams are so low. Looking at the weather forecast here, this is what we get from the South African Weather Services to indicate what the average weather prediction is going forward. And you'll notice here where there's no coloring in over here, that is where our dams are located. And what does the say? There's no clear signal of the kind of rainfall that we can expect here. So we can have no rainfall or a lot of rainfall. And for the last 2 weekends, we've been lucky to have some rainfall, but there's no significant rainfall predicted in the next couple of weeks going forward. So we are rather erring on the cautious side to say we will at best have average rainfall for this period. And the rainfall statistics that I've just shown you indicates we will probably at best have that situation going forward there. Then just looking at our average water consumption since 2017, and we've been tracking, and you can see here earlier towards 2019, end of year, we were hitting close to 300, and the situation has really not significantly changed. At the moment, we're sitting at about 290 megaliters per day. You can see the month of September, we average about 288 roughly per month. We're sitting at 287 per month. And what this means is that we are over abstracting on the available water, that is 267. That's the restricted volume of water that we have as a metro available from our resources. Just to put that into context, at the beginning of the water year, which is 1st of July, in June of every year, the Department of Water and Sanitation takes stock of the available water in all the resources and check how much water we can take safely out of that resource for a 12-month period, which is a water year. And based on that, restrictions are imposed on that. And on the Kolgaluri system, there's a 70% restriction on the water. That means we're only getting 30% of our water from that resource. On the Impofu Churchill system, we are restricted to 50% of our water. And the balance of the water we have to make up from other resources, as well as obviously cutting our water consumption down. And we've estimated that our water consumption on the available resources is 267 megaliters per day. And that includes an estimated amount of 170 megaliters from the Nooitgedag system. But we are consuming still 290 megs per day, which means we have a deficit of about 40 megaliters per day on a daily basis. And what this means, the proverbial day zero is coming on us because we're taking too much water out of the Crom system. 65, we're actually taking 3 times more than what we should be taking. And that's where the 40 megs per day deficit is coming from. Although Churchill has got quite a bit of rain now, but let that not be a false sense of security because we're taking too much water out of the resource in any case. And this is the problem that we said. So what we're thinking of taking out 50 megs per day for the 12 months, we can't take that. We're taking that 50, more than that 50 megs out of one resource alone. In fact, we're taking about 80, almost 90 megs out of that resource, meaning the available water for a 12-month period is almost cut down by half. And that is the dilemma that we sit with as a metropolitan municipality and its customers. So this is just a depiction of the 267 megs per day that I've indicated, 52 from the Churchill in Impofu, 18 megs from the Luri Dam, is the balancing dam. We take our water. Remember, that's only 30%. That equates to 30% of available water. Groendal Dam, we only can take about 15 megs per day. Between Springs and the Balkan Sand, we take a amount of 11 megs per day, and 170 megs we're bringing in from Nooitgedag to make up the 267. So this is part of the status quo that we're looking at. These pictures this morning look similar to those in the newspaper, and it just shows you we're going back to September 2018, so we're actually back to that situation again 12 months later, shall I say 24 months later. And looking at the individual water supply that we've had, we had these graphs updated yesterday, and it just shows you the impact of the graphs down here. We've been flattened. The graph has been flattened since June here. We've been speaking about flattening of the curve. So this is what happened in June. And so what this means is we're just about taking the average rainfall that is coming in, that is being used, and this is what's used out of the Kolga Dam. The Impofu Dam, you'll see it hasn't, even with the rains that we had in August 2 years ago, the dam just climbed from a 28% to about 38%, and since then it has been dropping all the time, and it's been flattened at the level where the barge is operating at the moment. And going forward, we're looking at is why we show a decline and anticipate a decline in the dam levels in, because we're going beyond the spring rain period into the hot months of summer of December, January, February, where we have our hottest months and obviously months of highest water consumption as well. So we are going to look into a very difficult period going forward, even though we did have some rain and inflow into our dams. This is the Churchill Dam. It spiked in September last year, October 2 years ago. It went full and hovered there, and since about December last year, it's been dropping all the time. And remember what I've indicated earlier on, the amount of water that we're taking out of the dam has been more than what we have. And therefore, here's the spike that has happened recently. We went up from about 52% to 65%, and we anticipate a drop coming over the next hot periods, as I've indicated. Similar to the Groendal Dam, the kind of drop that we merged that similar to a December, January period of abstraction that we normally have during that period. So that is what we're doing at that particular point in time. This graph here indicates a combined storage of all the Metro's water supply areas, and this indicates where we are at the moment at 20% and where we look going through going forward. This is the comment. In September 2018, we went up to 54%, and we turned at an average dam level of 16.9% on the 17th of August this year. And we climbed now to 21.62%. That was dated yesterday. So that just depicts the fluctuation in the, shall I say, the low rainfall that we've had and the water consumption associated with that during the same period. So what is the municipality doing about it? We have embarked on looking at the backlog of our water leaks, taken stock of it, because that is our first port of call. So we have looked at that already, and we're looking at the water consumption trends that we have had. So we believe by doing this, we've intervened and dropped our water consumption about 5 megs per day. And these are the options that I'm just going to discuss briefly going forward. As I've indicated on the water leaks, the guys are looking at water leaks. We even look at pressure management per se and advanced pressure management. We've got 60-70% installations of this in the Metro as well, and this is what we are doing forward on an ongoing basis. We've identified an additional 10 stations that we will be rolling out over the next 2-3 months as well to deal with this matter. Then we spoke about installation of the barge. The barge has been installed on the Mpofu Dam. We deliberately did not abstract water from the barge until it became necessary, because it would be rather more prudent to save the water in the dam and rather use more water from the Nomkhita scheme and save water on this side. So that is what we've done there. But over the last a couple of months, we've been running the barge full bore, and we're extracting about 30 megs per day from that resource at the moment. So the other intervention is to use the maximum amount of water from the Nomkhita system as we can. And this is what we're doing at the moment. The blue areas that is shaded on the graph, on the map here, indicates the direct supply of water from the Nomkhita system into the Kuga IDZ, the Motherwell area, Markman area, down into Blue Water Bay, down into Swartkops over here, Amsterdam Hoek area as well. On the Chatty area, the Bethels or Bloemendal area over here, feeding into Reservoir Hills, Dispatch area, and we've actually expanded also into the lower parts here of Uitenhage as well. So by us doing that, we're actually reducing the demand on the Groendal Dam, because the Groendal Dam do not have an alternative water source backup. So we're cutting the zone smaller to take less water from the Groendal Dam, and therefore also increasing the usage of the water from Nomkhita. The remaining water that's not being used in this area, then we pump through 2 booster pump stations, one at Motherwell and the other one at Stanford Road, and we pump them through to Greenbushes area into the Chelsea Reservoir area, and from there we distribute it into the western areas, and it feeds from here into Galvandale area over here, and from there down into the Lorraine, Fairview areas as well over here as well, and bringing the remainder of that water to supplement the reduced water we get from Luri co-analysis, because we can only get 18 megs per day from there. So the remainder of the water we must take for there. Also from that, bearing in mind that about 12 to 15 megs per day goes into KwaNobuhle directly off that pipeline. So the majority of the water that we're getting from there, we send into the KwaNobuhle area to see that that area gets water. So the majority of the water that we're getting into the Chelsea zone at the moment comes from Nooitgedag per se. And you'll notice that I've pointed out the connection here onto the KwaNobuhle area, meaning that if this resource dries up, the first community directly affected would be the community of KwaNobuhle. And this is the Churchill pipeline coming around the coast over there, feeding right into a Stroondale reservoir located in Gowandale, and from there, right over there, and then from there, drops right into the water supply into New Brighton area over there as well. So that is how the system feeds into the area, which demonstrates that the whole supply system is quite integrated, and to a large extent we can cross feed water, but there's certain areas we cannot get there, and it depends on the available water and the pressures in the system for us to supply that water. This is just a closer definition of the 140 megs that we're getting through the low-level system. The high-level system, we're treating the grassroots water, that's untreated water in the green pipeline. We bring it into the grassroots reservoir, we treat the water there, and we blend the water back into the water from the low-level scheme, feed it into the Motherwell zone, Kuga zone, and then the balance goes through to all the way through to Chelsea on the other side. So this is the temporary water treatment facility that we've modified the reservoir, an existing reservoir that we've modified to a temporary water treatment facilitator. There are stirrers that we put into the roof. The untreated water coming in, here the coagulating chemicals, they're injected into the pipeline, horizontal flow through the reservoir with launders taking the water off the top, water coming out, dosing with chlorine to stabilize and purify the water from a sterilization point of view, and then it's ready for use for our communities, and this water is safe to drink. And so that indicates, just to show how we bring the water in from the high lift pump station into grassroots. After treatment, it goes into, from there, it actually goes into Motherwell Reservoir and the Motherwell Booster pump stations, and from there it goes further to the Stanford Road Booster through to Chelsea, as I've explained earlier on. And then from the balls initiative that we have, we've got the ball, Kugakop balls that we've drilled. We've located it on the fault that is linked to the springs, what we call the Kuga fault. And we've drilled quite a number of balls there. We find 5 production balls that can be significant water. The amount of water that we found is between 15 and 20 megs per day. And these we're constructing the water treatment works at the moment, because the water is high in iron and manganese. And that will essentially, it will make your clothes red-brown when you wash your clothes in that. And that's the reason for the treatment facility that's been generated there. At the Churchill Dam, we've also located some balls there, and the idea is to, the balls has been drilled already. We need to put the pumps and motors onto them now, and the pipelines to link it to the treatment facility at Churchill. The same with the Morgrove.
Oh, there he is.
Do I continue? Okay. Then at Bushy Park, apart from are we online? I've explained. So we're getting down to the Bushy Park Wellfield. And with this area, we have discovered a good resource of groundwater there, and which we want to develop. Of all of these ones, the most productive one is the Bushy Park one, and that is our main target area, supported by St. George's, and then more elaborate on the Churchill and the Marlborough. But all of this, we hope to get about 15 to 20 megs per day of all of these resources added together. And if everything comes onto screen later this year, say early next year, we hope that'll be 5% of our additional of our demand that we'll be able to augment and offset from this resource. Communication is obviously very relevant. You've seen on our social media platforms as well as the local newspapers of the of our awareness we're going through, and we appeal on our customers to save water at all costs, to stick to 50 liters per person per day. And as the CEO of the chamber has indicated, water that 10 years ago we have, it was highlighted of the critical water nature, and we are fully aware of this, and behavioral change has to come with this as well. We always say South Africa is a water scarce country, but sometimes our actions don't reflect that, and that probably includes us as a municipality as well, because we need to add more urgency of our response to leaks and the like. So that is remained a critical area for us. So going forward into the medium term, which is probably more 6 to 12 months, I indicate 3 to 12 months because the work is happening already. And in about June next year, we will be on full capacity for the Nooit Gedacht low-level scheme at 210 megs per day. So that will bring additional water available to us as well. Then following that, in about March this year, I must just not, in about March this year, we will, they commence construction for the Kucha water treatment works, and that's a 26-month construction period, and that'll come upstream in about 2 years from now, and then that'll generate 15 megs per day. The Kucha CDC has put out a desal plant tender for 15 megs per day. That is on tender at the moment, and this is a medium-term to long-term project that we will be embarking in conjunction with the Kucha SEZ on this matter as well. Then that gives you an aerial view of the Kucha Corp water treatment works that's currently being constructed. There was a site visit with the media there last week. This is the latest technology in viewing and providing schematics of how the facility will look with a lot of natural light, process control, seeing what is going on. So it's been very designed around people operating it and on the smallest footprint as possible. Then just to summarize in terms of medium to long, because as much as we're looking at the short term to deal with things, we must also look at the long term. And as indicated earlier on, we must look at this as well so that we can look at our water sustainability into the future. So the balls will bring us 15 megs per day by February next year, March next year. The Nooit Gedacht phase will bring us additional 40 megs per day by June, July next year. And then the Kucha desal plant will probably be by December 2021 or early 2022. That will be up and running then. And then the Kucha water treatment facility will give us 15 megs per day by September 22. By September 22, we would have augmented the water system with 85 megs per day. And this excludes an additional desal plant for the metro on the Schoenmakers side of the metro. So these are our medium to long-term plans, coupled to what we're doing on the interim, which will put the metro in good standing. But the key is to cut the water consumption down currently to achieve that. So what our critical challenges, obviously, we've had a prolonged rainfall period of fluctuation, and we had a 3-year low rainfall period during 2010, from 2009, roughly 2008-9, right up to 2011 in July 2011, we had a recovery of the dams at that point in time. And then since about 2015, 2016, we had a bit of fluctuation, and that's the prolonged period of low rainfall that we've had. Then the Kolgan and Porford dams, the biggest dams, hasn't been full for the last 3 years. So that just indicates to you that what I've just said of the prolonged period of low rainfall that we've had. We still have a problem with high water consumption that we have, and obviously we need to cut water consumption at all costs, at all levels. We sit with vandalism of our infrastructure, and this not only vandalism of water infrastructure, but also vandalism of electrical infrastructure, because if we don't have electricity, we can't pump the water. So they are interlinked from that as well. We also have an attitude that some customers, they are able to pay for their water, so they don't care how much they use. So that we are also hoping to change with installation of water restrictors to restrict the amount of water that they're using. So that is what we also will be embarking on in the short term. So before December this year, we will definitely be tackling some of those high water users and basically restricting their water consumption as well. And that is probably a few thousand customers that are sitting to that band. We have to reduce the water consumption without affecting the business, and this is what we've been liaising with the Business Chamber over the last couple of years. I can also say, because of the frequency of drought situations in the metropolitan space, we've had a lot of discussion with Business Chamber over the years, and their business have become water-wise over the many years, and therefore we wouldn't want to affect their business as well, because that affects employment and the like. So that remains a challenge to us. How do we encourage businesses to use as little water as possible, but also to keep their businesses running and to keep employment at appropriate levels, if not higher? And if we don't, especially from a domestic water point of view, if we don't do the right thing, this is where we could land up queuing for water going forward. Thank you. Thank you. I'll stop sharing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Perry. Just listening to you and also looking at the slide that you shared around the rainfall forecast, it is quite worrisome. And it also proves that this discussion that we're having today is quite timely. It is important that there are some interventions that we all should look at, because we do have a bigger problem of, dryness and drought, etc. But also we need to make sure that whatever we have, we manage quite effectively. I've noted that there's a number of questions, comments that have come through, which is quite exciting. And we also have people watching as far afield as Dubai, some of which are people who come from the metro. So it's quite a robust chat group that I'm getting. I'm getting a lot of questions. I have let Barry go over the 20-minute allocation that he had, because I did believe that the information that we were sharing was quite important. We are still going to try to finish on time. If we're not able to answer all questions during the live webinar, we will make sure that the questions are answered anyway. Without much more waste of time, I'd like to invite Helen Davies from the Western Cape. I did see that there was also a question on the chat group about how much have you learned from others, including the Western Cape. So Helen, over to you. Please share with us the lessons learned in the Western Cape when you guys were faced with the same or similar situation. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nomkhita. So welcome, everyone. We certainly had a baptism by fire in the Western Cape, and I really welcome the opportunity to share with you the approach that we took to build economic water resilience during the crisis, and also some of the lessons that we learned in that approach. So my name is Helen Davies, as Nomkhita said, from the Western Cape Government Department of Economic Development and Tourism. The slides I have are fairly detailed, and I won't go through every bit of detail, but I will share these with the organizers to pass on as needed, so you can go through in your own time. What's critical on this slide is the blocks on the left-hand side, where from the start, we didn't only focus on a day zero and what happens in a day zero and how to prepare for that day zero, but we also had to deal with a number of other issues, which I'm sure you're all well aware of. So around low pressure water supply, the uncertainty of water supply, both now and moving forward for business expansion, variable water quality, and the knock-on high costs of water. We essentially dealt with the crisis using kind of an economic resilience work stream, which focused on 4 things. The one was around helping businesses to reduce water consumption. The second was to help businesses to improve or increase their own water supplies, to prepare businesses for a potential day zero, but then also to build the water sector of the provinces. So those businesses that provide the water services and goods that are required to improve water resilience. Important to stress is that we focused both on the immediate water crisis needs as well as strengthening long-term water resilience. And why this is important is, I mean, everyone knows in a crisis, if you put certain crisis measures in place that might not be sustainable long-term or might damage a resource long-term, you set yourself up for potential failure down the line. Importantly, the economic workstream consisted of a number of partners, and I think it's really exciting here today that you've already got the Business Chamber, key businesses, and the city with the Nelson Mandela Bay Metropolitan Municipality. And important too, we also had the various provincial government departments, including agriculture, our environmental affairs colleagues and others. We had our economic development partnership and various business associations. In terms of how we worked very much in a collaborative style. We met on a weekly basis. We shared roles and responsibilities between all of us, between organizations, between departments. Businesses put up their hand and business associations to take on key roles. And that's why it's fantastic to see the leadership of your business chamber here today to really pull everyone together. We also allocated roles according to sectors. So some people had stronger networks, for example, with civil society. Some had stronger networks with SMMEs, etc. Where the civil society networks became important was particularly the smaller businesses, informal businesses, etc. that weren't in the CBDs and that weren't in the industrial areas, because you do need to look after everyone. We placed huge emphasis on continually, regularly sharing transparent information. That took a while to come. So in the beginning, as government, we largely held on to information, and in a short space of time realized that helped no one. So it was an open sharing of information from us to businesses, but also from businesses back to government to really understand the challenges and to try address those in partnership. We all put a lot of resources into this. So I think what's key to recognize upfront is this isn't something you can, put some underling on to work with on the side. A large majority of people had to get their hands dirty, get stuck in and help find solutions and implement solutions. The National Business Initiative, in our case, was also critical in bringing together a number of large business players. And interestingly, some of those businesses had footprints elsewhere in the country, so they took those lessons back to other parts of the country. And then from our side, we also contracted in additional independent support. I'll speak through that later, and they really helped to support businesses as we went through. We took a clear prioritization approach. So our first level of priority was to look at those municipalities that were at high risk of municipal urban drought. So we were obviously working with the whole of the Western Cape, not just the metropolitan area. We looked at businesses within those that were high water users, water dependent. So water dependent could, for example, be a laundry, vulnerable businesses. We looked at number of employees. This was critical for us because we have certain smaller municipalities where one employer might employ 2/3 of the people who have employment in that area. And we also looked at critical sectors. So if there was a day zero, which were the businesses or types of businesses that couldn't afford to stop operating or to radically downscale their operating. Across the 4 areas that I spoke about, just some key things that we did learn is the one is that in terms of water consumption, there were significant reductions that were found across multiple sectors. So sometimes these reductions were forced by very heavy restrictions placed onto business. We found the one thing that was a challenge was sometimes it was seen as the easier lever to pull to reduce water use in businesses by huge amounts because it was easier for government to control. But that has a massive economic impact. But what we did find with businesses was they did on their own bat manage to find significant water savings. A lot of those savings they could actually achieve with minimal costs. And so a lot of that was through improved metering, sub-metering, behavior change, and process changes. Significant savings. What we also found out from businesses was the more they managed to reduce water costs, they actually subsequently landed up saving energy costs as well, because they were essentially using, improving their process operations. Those interventions that businesses put in place around costly technologies actually landed up having very short payback times, particularly as the cost of water rose. There were extensive water cascading opportunities, so within and between businesses. So that's using the partially treated water or partly used water with another business that doesn't need potable water for certain processes. And there was also increased water treatment for reuse on site that a lot of businesses put into place. In terms of own or additional water augmentation schemes, there was a significant shift of businesses to their own water supplies. Basement water, I'm not sure if this is an option or not in the Nelson Mandela Bay region, but in the city of Cape Town, a large part of the city is reclaimed. So there's a lot of basement water that businesses for years have actually been pumping out and pumping into the stormwater system. Some of that water could actually provide 70% of the business's needs. A lot of use of treated effluent. So this became a major opportunity where the city struck up partnerships with businesses to provide treated effluent. Where pipelines were available, those were used, otherwise tankers were used. And the city also set up a system whereby if a pipeline wasn't available to a certain industrial area and the business was willing to pay for that pipeline, they would offset the cost of that with reduced tariffs over a period of time, signed in an agreement with the city. A lot of business-based boreholes. We did have challenges with licenses here, and one of the further challenges was because the licensing was so delayed, a lot of businesses went rogue and put boreholes down without the licensing requirements. We would really, really warn a caution against this. What it does is it means that the use of groundwater is not monitored. We found in some areas, industrial areas, 5 or 6 businesses that had illegally sunk boreholes were drawing excessive amounts of water from those boreholes, and it actually pulled the whole water table down. So 5 or 6 businesses, massive investment, no water. So we really caution against going rogue in terms of using groundwater. Some businesses set up small-scale desalination plants, and that really helped particularly some of the bigger businesses that were based right on the coast, such as in Saldanha Bay. And there was a lot of exploring of collaborative investments, so co-investing with other businesses in the vicinity, for example, to set up a borehole site or a treatment plant to take effluent, partially treated effluent from the city and treat that to potable standards. In terms of preparing businesses for day zero, we worked with businesses around business continuity planning. So really looking at all your operations and seeing what could cut back and what could stop should you hit a day zero event. What was very important there was businesses who thought that they had found all their water saving opportunities. When they prepared their BCPs, they actually found even further. So really encourage businesses to look at BCPs. We developed some templates around BCPs, and all of that material we can make available. We also supported businesses in logistics planning for should there have been a phase 2 towards day zero. Some businesses took on roles of additional bottling. So for example, SAB even started bottling large amounts of water for the city and for others. And some businesses offered expertise, technologies, finance help, etc. And I'll speak just now how businesses actually worked also with their supply chains to help strengthen their supply chain as we move towards increasing restrictions, but also in case we hit a day zero. In terms of building the water sector, we found there was a huge number of water technology and services companies that already exist, and they needed help to grow their market, to link them up with potential businesses, etc. We helped pull together a database of water suppliers. I'll show you where that database is available. I just need to be clear that we haven't vetted those suppliers, and they cut across municipal, business, and household services, but that's clearly indicated in the database. There were a lot of international service providers that flooded the market during the time, but we found during the crisis a lot more local solutions came up, and a lot of those local solutions were actually better tailored to the South African market. And a lot of opportunities still exist to grow the sector further, which we are working on moving forward. The slide speaks to the role of businesses. So often businesses might focus directly on your own operations, but increasingly through our crisis, businesses and ourselves, we all started recognizing that they had a huge role to play both up and downstream. So to work with their suppliers, to communicate, to influence, and to support their own water use, and the same with customers. And within their own operations, to look at both improved efficiencies, reducing, reusing, and treating their water, to look at their own water supply systems, but also to influence and help employees, both at work and at home, and to plan for business continuity. And the lesson learned was really that by working collectively, they could actually help collectively solve problems. So in the early stages of the drought, we had many businesses that were willing to work with us, but not willing to work with each other for fear of competitive advantage. And over time, those barriers broke down quite substantially, and businesses really started to work together and collaborate. The strategic approaches to how we helped businesses, we use this, what we call a water resilience continuum. Excuse me. And essentially, we moved from left to right. A lot of businesses who initially came to us in the early parts of the drought came to ask about how to get groundwater licenses, how to install desalination systems, etc. What we always did was quietly nudge businesses to the left-hand side of this continuum to really ensure that businesses understood what water they were using where they might have water leaks, and to set targets that were realistic for themselves. Next, to look at water efficiency interventions. So to really understand where they could improve the efficiency of their processes, where they could improve efficiency through behavior change, where they could put fittings, water efficient fittings and technologies in place, and any water-wise landscaping if that was appropriate for their business. The third part of the continuum was looking at potential on-site reuse, grey water reuse, as well as process water reuse, and also looking at water exchange networks with other businesses, particularly in an industrial area. And then on the right-hand side is the alternative water supplies. So whether that be treated effluent, groundwater supplies, rainwater tanks with treatment, desalination, etc. And obviously, as you move from the left to the right of the continuum, you increase the cost and complexity of what's being put in place. We offered a number of areas of support to businesses as a collective. I've put 2 website addresses at the bottom of the slide. You're welcome to go to those websites and access any materials. And if you have any questions, you can ask us for further. But we had workshops and forums. Sometimes it made more sense to have those in a particular spatial area, for example, an industrial area. Sometimes those were held by sector. Sometimes they were focused on a particular topic, for example, accessing groundwater licensing, etc. But we have access to a lot of materials from that on the website. Green Cape, who are a partner through this, also pulled together a number of case studies. Those are also available, and they clearly show what a business put in place, what they spent in that initiative, and how much they're saving both water-wise and cost-wise. We had a number of communication tools, and as I said, those websites are still live at the moment. And we also provided a number of posters. Those posters obviously need to be applicable depending on the audience. So some of the posters that were developed were very much for the tourism market. The province got hard hit by tourists not coming, fearful of not having water, but also fearful of creating a further burden on the area. So a lot of posters and communication material went out to say, please do come visit. You're the lifeblood of our economy. We need you, but use water responsibly when you get here. There was also a lot of communication material put out, helping to show people, individuals, how to use 50 liters of water a day. We also provided various one-on-one meetings, site visits for businesses, virtual assistance where people could be assisted on the phone, and we had technical briefs and data. So those technical briefs are still available, and they give cost calculations based on a size of a business and a certain type of business, and helps you make any financing decisions. In terms of the water sector development, annually we fund Green Cape to develop what's called a market intelligence report. The latest ones were released in April, May this year. You're welcome to access those, and those are more for the water sector to understand where the opportunities are, what the key trends are in the water sector, and any advice around key barriers being unlocked, whether those be regulatory, finance, how to access finance, etc. We also facilitated and hosted a lot of foreign delegations. A lot of these were interested in engaging for two reasons. One was where they had companies invested in the region, and they wanted to make sure that those companies understood what was happening and what they could do to protect themselves. But the other side was that there were certainly a lot of international water sector businesses that were trying to get into the market. And so we just had to be a bit cautious and guide them in the right way. But we couldn't risk swamping municipalities with too many technologies in the time that they were literally trying to keep their head above water. And then importantly, Green Cape, with the funding of the Friedrich Nauenheimer Foundation, have just released a Green Business Support Services Directory. So this is for any businesses in the sector that need to know what support is available and where. So further in terms of case studies, just touching on a few things, is JG Africa, for example. So this is an office commercial environment. They managed to reduce their water consumption by 67% purely through awareness and water efficiency measures. This is a company that was fairly up to speed with issues around resource efficiency even before the crisis. So it shows what is possible when you really apply minds. Thread, so a big manufacturing company, they reduced their water consumption by 70% over 5 years. So they started pre the drought, because we obviously had a drought back in 2010 as well. And that was through equipment automation and process adaptation. They're saving 1.9 million rand annually. Quality Beverage reduced their water use by 27%. That was largely through a staff water saving campaign and reusing bottle rinsing water. So again, it shows the cumulative savings so far, but also the investment that they put in place, and shows that a relatively small investment can lead to massive savings even from year one. Transbaco Flexibles, so another manufacturing company, reduced water by 85% through conversion from water to air cooling machinery and recycling process water. And lastly, GSK, the pharmaceutical company, by using 2 reverse osmosis plants, reduced their water consumption by 42% over 6 years. So on average, our industrial businesses, we found, achieved a 30% saving, a lot less for our commercial businesses. So back of the envelope calculations showed a 10% reduction for commercial businesses. And what that shows is where businesses rely on water more heavily, they were more inclined to make those savings happen. So a huge request to yourselves is, when you engage with businesses, is to really stress that in the city of Cape Town, for environment, for example, commercial water use is higher than industrial water use. So the commercial guys should have reduced a lot more, but didn't. So really encourage all to play their part. So some of the key lessons learned. Excuse me. The first is that water regulation is confusing. So a lot of businesses don't know where to start. They may receive incorrect information from consultants. Really encourage you to tap into the resources that you've got, but also to work with the chamber and with the local government associations and others to really demystify regulations and to help you through those processes. The transparent and frequent communication was absolutely critical to what we managed to achieve. We built partnership models, we built trust, and you need to do that so to avoid a blame game and really find where your common ground is and where you can work together. We need to find effective ways of channeling private sector support. So a lot of businesses really wanted to support the bigger effort in terms of water saving. Here, one of the most successful campaigns, I think, was one started by ShopRite, which is a smart water meter challenge in schools. The government decision-making processes are incredibly complex. And there was a lot of criticism over government as to not being transparent, making the information too complicated, contradicting itself. Where we saw a turnaround in that space was where the city started producing what was called a water outlook. It was a very clear document. It was a 4-page document. It came out once a month, and it gave a really clear indication as to where the dam levels were, where demand was, where supply was, what the key challenges were that the city was working on. A very useful document. So I'd really encourage the authorities within Nelson Mandela Bay to potentially look at something similar. The learning is rapid in a crisis, and business, you all know, you're able to adapt and move very quickly, sometimes faster than we do in the public sector. The awareness level of water usage we found was very low at the start of the crisis, but very soon people become experts, and they want to be experts, and they want to know. So I think also reach out where you have business partners, business networks, or other branches of your businesses within the Western Cape. We really encourage you to reach out to them and see what you can learn from them as well. Prioritization was crucial. So I think for all of you, as a collective and working together, you're not going to be able to work on every single business. So key is looking at the levers that you have and the communication you have that will leverage as much change as possible. And then when you have focused efforts to really look at which are the sectors that are either most vulnerable, using the most water, etc. Define what success looks like. So really trying to understand, as a whole for your economy and for your region, but also for your business, is what does success look like? What are you trying to achieve? And then how do you set the right measures in place? You need to have coordination between the role players, and you need to have adaptive management. So try things, experiment. If they don't work, change. We changed course, I don't know how many times. Sometimes we changed course twice within a week. But what we were trying to do was make sure that we were focusing on the most value-added areas. The day zero narrative, there was a lot of critique, but also a lot of support for it. It had unintended consequences. It certainly promoted massive behavior change within the city and in the province, but it also harmed the tourism industry and it harmed investor sentiment. So when you use a day zero narrative as a collective, is always be cautious. It's similar to load shedding. Doesn't mean we're having blackouts in the energy space. Load shedding means we are trying to manage the system so that we don't have a failure of the energy system. And day zero is much the same. Is day zero, you still have water, but not much at all. And you're using it as your last resource to prevent a failure of the system. So just be cautious around how you use that terminology. I would really suggest engaging with national departments and not just water and sanitation. This is something we didn't realize early on. And if we had to go through this again, this is something we certainly would do more effectively, is engaging with other departments such as the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department and DTI. And then lastly is also identify international companies that are based in the Nelson Mandela Bay region. Try to tap into their consulates, tap into their international networks, whether it be for advice, whether it be for funding support, whatever it might be. We found that, we had, for example, one of the big pharmaceutical and health and hygiene products had massive offices all over the world, and they landed up having some amazing water experts that they flew out, and they helped not only the company, they actually helped a much greater group of companies and ourselves in the public sector as well. I'm going to fly through these last 3 slides, but just to say that we're continually trying to work on the issue of long-term economic water resilience. We're trying to work on the balance around water costing, water supply, what businesses put in place versus what government puts in place. We're looking at various financial models and mechanisms to improve economic water resilience. So we're re-looking at municipal supply models, what the impact might be of further decentralized systems, for example, businesses. Because what we found was during the crisis, a lot of businesses put their own systems in, and following the crisis, the municipalities and cities wanted those businesses to come back onto the grid. So we're doing a lot of negotiation and working in that space. We've also been working with certain water intensive sectors to try help them reduce their water use further, and we'll continue doing that. We're looking at the economic water balance. So although we passed the crisis in all but one of the catchment areas in the Western Cape, we're very aware that with any economic and population growth, we could potentially be getting into trouble. So we're very closely looking at water supply and demand across all municipalities. We're also looking at not just the extent of economic growth that might be possible, but the nature and type of that growth and how water intensive it is. Obviously, with the COVID crisis now, we set back a bit in terms of economic growth. But we do obviously hope, as with the rest of the country, that we can get that growth back on track. We'll continue to support the water sector. So we're looking at a Western Cape Water Innovation Network, and part of that is to also help these businesses to set up demonstration and pilot sites, and engaging with private sector on that as well, so that the technology is less of an unknown and businesses have better sight as to what technologies are available and what those might cost them. We provide ongoing business support through sector desks and partnerships and engagements. We try to continue those between government and business. And then my last slide is just we operate in what's called the VUCA world. So it's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and it requires a reset. Resources are shrinking. The projections around climate change are that rainfall is becoming more scarce. So we've got to look and think differently. We've got to see how do we build in flexibility and adaptability into our systems. How do we work in partnership to ensure that it's businesses, municipalities, and households that are all working to reduce water use and build resilience? And importantly, how do we look to share the load? So to share the risk, share the financing burden, but not in a way that everything is set just on the private sector. It has to be this balancing act between all parties. Thank you very much. Over to you, Nomkhita.
Thank you very, very much, Helen, for that very practical and quite comprehensive advice. I'm sure that there's a lot that we can learn from yourselves. When we heard your presentation for the first time earlier, then we decided to invite you. We thought that we do not have to make the same mistakes that you may have made. And I do like the fact that it's very clear in what you've presented that collaboration is the key. So this is now all our problem. It's no longer just the municipality's problem. It's every stakeholder's problem, and that we need to work together. But I very much like the water outlook. I think it's something that we need to maybe pick up and say, as the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality, together with ourselves, we need to start working on that so that we know exactly where we are on the water scene at any given time. But I think what was also more important is the fact that you focused on adaptive management. So you started to do things, learn things, try things, fail, but fail fast so that you can quickly correct and move on. And that's what we would like to do as well in the region. Thank you very, very much for sharing your presentation with us, and we will get back to you at the Q&A. There's a lot of questions on the panel, but I'd like to call upon Mr. Andrew Lucas, who is the head within the Provincial Department of Water, because we also recognize that the metro is not on its own here. The province does have a role to play. We've asked Mr. Lucas to say to us, what support can province give to the metro? And anything else that Mr. Lucas would like to share with us. And now over to you, Mr. Lucas, and thank you very much.
Good morning, Nikita, and good morning, listeners. Thank you very much for inviting me to this session. I am going to talk briefly about the support that is given to Nelson Mandela and other municipalities. And I'm just trusting that I'm able to load up correctly here. Right, I'm hoping that that's correct. Good. Thanks very much. I just want to talk about the support given to Nelson Mandela and other municipalities. And why I'm saying other municipalities, because they share in the resources that Nelson Mandela is using. The overview, I'm going to talk to those 4 items, basically the mandate of the department, the funding support, the planning support, and the management of drought support. And if I can just move to the mandate of the department very briefly, the National Department of Water Affairs is our sector leader. We're the custodian of our country's water resources, and we do manage and maintain bulk infrastructure. That's the infrastructure that crosses municipal boundaries, and I'll show briefly some of the aspects that I'm referring to. We also are the regulator of the water sector and supporter of municipalities, water institutions, and water users. However, that support is fairly small, and often it's in prioritized areas. If I can just briefly talk about the drought funding support that is given. And the department does not usually fund metros. They are large institutions that have access directly to National Treasury through funds like the USDG grants. And so most of our DWS funds go to priority districts where there is backlogs in water and sanitation services. So ordinarily we fund smaller municipalities and often the municipalities on the eastern part of our province more than on the western side. But what I wanted to talk about was a number of projects where we are involved. The Nooitgedacht Kuche low-level scheme that Barry Martin has referred to, we are funding phase 3 of that project. The Kuche local municipality, we are funding the groundwater development to find alternative sources and therefore relieve some of the pressures on the Algoa system, and also water conservation and demand management within Kuche local municipality. And then lastly, at a recent meeting, we gave a commitment for 100 tanks to Nelson Mandela for the emergency facilities that Barry was referring to. If I can just briefly talk about the Nooitgedacht Kuche low-level scheme, and that's phase 3, Barry has mentioned it. It's the construction of 70 megaliter treatment module, bringing the capacity up to 210 megaliters a day, and that's to be completed in July. Then it also includes the construction of a 45 megaliter balancing storage reservoir at Olifantskop, and that's the one in the photograph. It's practically completed. And then cathodic protection and AC mitigation and pipe rehabilitation on the bulk infrastructure. And the project funding in phase 3 is 437 million. The other projects in Kuche local municipality, as it's not directly in Nelson Mandela area, I'm not going to spend much time on it, but the scope is groundwater development at Oyster Bay, St. Francis Bay, Jeffreys Bay, Humansdorp, Potensie and Hankey. And that's to ensure that there is alternative sources available, both for meeting the drought needs, but also for future development in the areas. The total yield of the boreholes drilled has been 10 megaliters a day, of which 6 megaliters is already equipped and connected to water supply systems. The other aspect in Kuche municipality is working on water conservation and demand management and upgrading of water treatment works so they can function effectively. And the water conservation and demand management is looking at installing meters and addressing internal leaks and repairs of leaks and so forth. The upgrading of water treatment works at Jeffreys Bay, augmentation at Kruisfontein, the replacing of leaking pipelines in Potensie, Hankey and Oyster Bay. I'm not going to go into the detail because it's actually beyond Nelson Mandela's boundaries. I'm going to move briefly on to the planning support that is provided to the city and to the Algoa systems. And the first one is the Algoa Systems Reconciliation Strategy Study. These are studies that are conducted every few years to ensure that they remain abreast with changes, and they are the ones that guide the development within the Algoa system. And then secondly, the Water Resource Planning Systems Directorate that looks continually at the various systems and at the Algoa system and looks at drought circumstances. Just to give you some detail about the Algoa System Reconciliation Strategy, it's funded by the department and its objective is to assist the users, which are Nelson Mandela Metro, the agricultural sector and the Kuche municipality in determining short, medium and long-term water resource options. And it's through the study that the various drought interventions that we're seeing now, the Nooitgedacht low-level scheme, the groundwater developments, and future supply options are considered. This is another version of the slide that Barry Martin showed, and it shows the Nelson Mandela Metro. And obviously the metro boundary is quite limited, but many of the resources are outside the boundary. We see the Krommer system, the Kuche system dam at this point, and the Nooitgedacht system that we can see here. What I'm showing too is the agricultural sector that participates in using the same water, both in the Lower Sundays River and along the Gamtoos Valley over here. And some of the water that has to come quite long distances. So I'm going to just indicate where the Nooitgedacht water does actually come from in the next slide. And so here we can see that the Gariep Dam on the Orange River in the Free State region is the source of the water that moves down to the Nooitgedacht system. It comes through a series of tunnels into the Eastern Cape, into the Fish River catchment. It flows down the Great Fish River, through further tunnels into the Little Fish River, and then another tunnel and canals into the Sundays River catchment, through Darlington Dam and down to Nooitgedacht. So these bulk infrastructure is what the National Department does look after and develop and maintain. And that brings the Nooitgedacht water into the city of Port Elizabeth. This Algoa system reconciliation looks at the historical use of water, and I found this one interesting because it shows the good improvements that were achieved during some of the drought, and particularly the drought of 2009-10 and 10-11 years. That was during the World Cup days. We can see such good improvement in the drop in water usage at that time. We also look at the current use, and you can see the pie diagram shows in bright blue the Nelson Mandela Metro's needs, in green Coga municipality, in purple the irrigation sector and the losses that are there, and the red slither is the potable water required by Coga IDZ. We also then look at the interventions necessary to make sure there is sufficient water going forward. And these bullets refer to the interventions that were considered. And the first one was water conservation and demand management. We can't afford to lose valuable water, especially water that is being treated to drinking water standards. And we need to have water conservation and demand management introduced at levels of 5%, 10%, and 15% savings. Then the second bullet was the Nooitgedag scheme. Phase 1, 2, and 3 were developed, and we're currently finishing phase 3. And phase 4 will be the next phase that needs to be considered going forward. Effluent treatment for, first of all, industrial use and even later potable standards was to be considered for freshwater flats and Coga areas, and the reuse was to be brought in phases. And some of it is happening, but not at a large scale at this stage. Then various groundwater schemes were considered, and we see them being developed already. And then the Lower Sundays River, where the return flows from the agricultural uses down that system could be considered, but we would have to have a desalination because the return flows are fairly salty. And then straight desalination of seawater. The proposal there of Swartkop sea salt has been overtaken by the Coga IDZ one, and then the Schoenmakers that Larry Martin spoke about. And then lastly, development of further surface water was to look at raising of Coga Dam and also the Gurnakop Dam, which is inland of Coga on the same river system. Just briefly, we can then see how these various initiatives can contribute to the water needs. You can see in the bottom of this graph is the existing system yield, and the blue line is the predicted need of water for Nelson Mandela Metro and the Algoa system, and the various initiatives that need to be brought in to make sure that we meet the needs. The next slide shows the opportunity that can come in with water conservation and demand management, and this line can be reduced by saving the losses and minimizing the demand on our systems. Just the scenario conclusions is that our shortages are often caused by drought, and that effective water conservation and demand management and leak control are essential to ensure that our municipalities and our users can have sustained water. We need to complete the Nooitgedag low-level scheme, and the issue is planning of interventions must proceed timelessly, because we find that we are having a longer implementation lead time required, and we also have uncertainty in growth of a water requirement. And the groundwater schemes to be pursued by Nelson Mandela Metro, and we can see progress that Barry has reported on. And then the desalination of schemes was seen more as a long-term initiative. They are not switch on and switch off schemes that need to be implemented. I'm moving on to the resource planning system that we look at with the support. And this is a national directorate that that monitors our systems, including the Algoa system, on a constant basis. And they run the annual hydrologic models to ensure what level of water restrictions are required each year. Now, if we observe those water restrictions, we will not run out of water. And so that's how the system does help, but we do need discipline in observing the restrictions. I'm moving on to the drought management support that we are involved in as a department. And I'm going to talk briefly about the Algoa system drought monitoring meeting that meets monthly, the war rooms, and also the department serving on the joint operations centers. Just briefly, the Algoa water monitoring meeting has been ongoing monthly for a number of years now, because as Barry has said, we've had drought conditions over a protracted period. but we do monitor the water use of all the sectors, as well as the interventions that are put in place, and we meet monthly for those meetings. And then we also try and address any non-compliance issues or stumbling blocks that we do find. And this is just some examples of the reporting that's had. We can see on the top left-hand side, we've got efficient use. The black line is the allocation, and the red line is the restriction. This is the Coger subsystem, and we can see that we're complying very well to the restricted volume. But we have got other systems, and this is the Cromer Churchill Dam, where we are exceeding the allocation, and that's running the risk that the subsystem could fail. And then the bottom graph just shows how we monitor and track water usage and the levels of restrictions that are required on the Algoa system. And this is specifically the Coger subsystem. But we have these for all of the subsystems and the whole system in the Algoa system. Lastly, I want to just talk about the war room that is meeting. Our provincial office has established a 2-weekly war room meeting that meets with all the municipalities, where we can discuss the challenges that the municipalities are having. We can monitor the implementation of activities, and we can assist with issues that are raised. In addition to that, we've got a WhatsApp group that allows very prompt communication and attention to be given to challenges that arise, and then feedback that can be given. And on these forums, the municipalities are also able to report on their project implementation necessary for the drought mitigations. That's basically the presentation I wanted to give. And really the message is that the municipalities need to comply with the water restrictions that are imposed, and the water users, as the domestic users, industrial users, and agricultural users, do also need to comply with those restrictions. And then we will ensure that we have enough water for all. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Mr. Lucas, thank you very much for this presentation. It also shows that all spheres of government do have a role to play, and also with the support. But I also like what you said about planning, because planning is key. That's why if we have to have water in the next 20 to 30 years, our planning today has to be very strong. I do like what you say. You say if we observe water restrictions, we will not run out of water. And I think that's a message that we should all carry forward in terms of how we do, and in terms of the behavior change that we all need to have. The last speaker, thank you very much, Mr. Lucas. The last speaker on the panels is Mr. John D. Watras, who's going to talk to us about the water conservation initiatives by business. So thank you, John D., and over to you.
Hi, Nomkhita. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah. All right. Yeah, perfect. All right. I just wanted to discuss a little bit more about the terminologies for the people listening in. So there's a whole bunch of things that we can do that the previous speakers have alluded to. But the first and easiest way is to reduce the use of water. So in other words, exactly what Barry Martin said, you've got flow reducers. I will be discussing some aerators and solutions for the public, where we can reduce the water and the consumption immediately, which is a short-term, which can be a long-term solution, and it's also a more cost-effective solution. The next step that you would want to do is reuse, as Barry and Andrew have mentioned, where you can use more water and energy efficient technology. So recycle your pool water, use grey water. Instead of washing your car with clean pool water, you could use grey water and so forth. So it's about reusing the water that we're currently using. Then we've got a reuse and recycle approach. So this is without treatment, meaning a lot of businesses are using grey water for cooling towers, and a lot of golf courses are using grey water for irrigation and so forth. So that's basically using water. Then you've got augmented water, which means groundwater or stream water. So therefore, you've got tanks and boreholes and rivers that you can collect water and reuse that as well. Then from an augmentation of rainwater, this is obviously what a lot of people are doing. A lot of businesses are putting these tanks in, and homes and so forth. So for instance, my folks are putting a tank system. They're not using municipal water at all. There's 2 of them on the property and they don't use a lot of water. So that is a nice way, and then you can pay back and save on that. And then we've obviously got the augmented with treatment, which is the rainwater, the groundwater and the stream water, where you can treat the water to be potable or treat it to a certain standard, depending what you want to use the water for. So there's no need to have a high investment if it's not going to be potable. And then obviously the reclaim would be where you treat the water to a high quality, which can be then used to drink, which Barry Martin obviously mentioned. And then there's certain solutions with biopipes, naturals, and then there's obviously reverse osmosis, which allows you to then be able to drink the water. So that's generally the processes that can be followed and the options available. To talk about the first one, which is reduce, the easiest way to reduce your water usage is generally flushing toilets, where you can use systems and systems where you can reduce the water used, as well as your tap water savers, which we call aerators. So you're able to install, as you can see on this picture, you've got different types of liters per minute with aerators, and these can be installed onto the taps, where you can reduce your taps from, say, 20 liters a minute to 2 liters a minute in bathrooms. You can reduce your showers from 60 or 20 liters a minute to 12 and 10 liters. And the return investment is less than a year with most cases where you install. There's a pictures that shows you the different options with the toilet savers on the right, and you've got your aerators, and there are types of solutions. So not all taps and all bathrooms have the same tap mechanism. So if you don't have a tap with an aerator on it, you can install it in an under counter before the water goes through the tap. This is the video that shows you, this is a normal aerator in a kitchen running at 9 liters a minute. Okay, and then basically we can then install different types of aerators where that aerator runs at 1.25 liters a minute on the same tap. So therefore reducing the water consumption from 9 liters to 1 liter. So every minute you're saving 8 liters of water without even realizing it. And then you can set it up at 2 liters a minute. So in kitchens, if you want to fill up a basin, you don't put a 1.25 liter aerator in, you can put a 2 liter or a 4 liter minute aerator. And then these ones are the mist, where you just want to wash your hands, you have a bit of soap, you don't need a lot of water. You can actually install this mist on all public toilets, bathrooms, those areas, in order to reduce the water. And there's an example of a 4 liter per minute running. So yeah, so you can install that. These are some of the solutions that you can install on certain sinisters that are commonly found around the globe. You've got your standard valve, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but we do have solutions that allow you to install on systems where it reduces the water. So if you're doing just having a wee, you don't need to use the whole water in the sinister. You only use, say, 50% of it. So that's a way of saving. The other thing is obviously to use reclaim water, which Barry and all the guys have alluded to, where you can install these types of systems. This is a biopipe, uses natural microorganisms where it treats the water, and you can oxygenate and put chemicals and treat systems. So this is a standard little system that you can put in that allows you for water access. What we've sort of approached and looked at in the metro is trying to have dedicated independent plumbers to help fix the leaks in pipeworks that may be logged at the call center, where we have, like, say, a corporate fund where we can assist the municipality. It was nice to see that a lot of the leaks have been fixed, that Barry mentioned in the numbers. So that's great to see. And then there is new technology on the market where you can injection mold certain pipes underground, or pipes at your house. If there's pipework in the wall, you don't have to dig open the wall to fix the pipework. There is ways of and solutions to fix those leaking pipes underground and so forth. There's also new technology which we're obviously looking at that can pick up movement and vibrations on pipework that is the underground. And this allows you to pick up potential areas where leaks or breaks can happen on pipework. And also the important thing, the consumers in the metro, they can register on the IVR system with the municipality, and they can submit their actual municipal water readings monthly. That's keeping a record for themselves. if they don't feel like they would like to install sub-meters with smart metering. And they can then manage their usage and consumption and keep a track of it to take ownership. The other thing, and Helen mentioned with smart water metering, where the consumer can install a sub-meter, and the meters can detect leaks and pick up usage and track usage in that. So this prevents the wastage of water due to leaks. And then the most important thing is the change of the consumer mindset in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, where, as Barry said, you know, if I can pay for it, I'm going to use it. Unfortunately, we can't have that mindset. We need to solve this water shortage together, and we need to use up all role players, and that includes the consumer and the ratepayer as well, in the Metro, and then we need to band together to solve the crisis. And I want to end off on a quote that I found from Alicia Rayner. Sometimes we don't face what's going on in our world, be it a water crisis or an earth crisis, because it's a little too scary and painful. So just like we don't want to face the parts of ourselves that are a little too uncomfortable or painful, we've got to face both and love both so that we can heal both. So therefore, you know, we need to come together. It is a crisis. You know, you don't want to be queuing for water, so everyone's got to play their part. And even if you just save 2 or 3 liters a day, it adds up in the overall collective. I just want to share one more screen, just to give you an idea of the sort of savings that can happen on a simple aerator. So if you look here, we've got a bathroom using a 1.251 aerator, a kitchen and a shower. This is your current aerator that's installed, and every minute you're using 30 liters. Where is it? It's paused. I resume share. Let me close this down. And then click on there. You got that? Perfect. So what I've done is I've taken a current aerator, say if you've just got one tap in your bathroom, one tap in your kitchen and a shower unit, you've got your current aerator of say 4 liters, 6 and 12. And if we install the new aerators on, you can see the saving from 30 liters a minute down to 15.25 liters a minute. Your investment is roughly 450 Rand in total for those 3 aerators. And if you take a household, if you take 100,000 households on an existing, so you've got your 3 and your 1.5 liter saving, there's a 1.48 megaliter per day saving. Just putting in the aerators with a minimal investment of 450 Rand. So it is doable immediately. I have approached a lot of the corporates in the Metro, where we are asking them to please, if they can, look at their financing of these aerators for the employees, where we can supply the employees these aerators and put them and install them in their properties for people who financially cannot afford to put them in. That's what we are looking at the moment. So thank you for your time. Any questions?
Thank you very much, John T, for that presentation. We have come to the agreed upon time. We had agreed that we would stop the webinar at 10. That also does not leave enough time for us to engage, therefore, on the Q&A. We've had a lot of questions and a lot of comments, and people also saying they'd like to be part of the solution. So we want to thank those people who have participated, and we will take all the questions and send them to the relevant panelists who will then respond to them, and we will make sure that we share them on the comment box of whichever platform that you would have been listening on. So at this point, I therefore would like to thank the President of the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber, Dr. Andrew Muir, for his leadership on matters of this nature. I'd also like to thank all the panelists for their time and for sharing with us very useful information. And we also would like to thank the participants who have joined us from all over the world, and those people who are caring about the Nelson Mandela Bay situation, and those who are concerned and would like to see that they become part of the solution. I'd further like to thank my team for always making sure that they support the objectives of the business chamber and making sure that we take things to the next step. What will then happen is that whatever we do on this platform, we will then take forward and make sure that there was a question saying, we hope that this would become almost a regular occurrence. So yes, we will have various interventions, but not only to talk about the problems, but also to look at solutions. And on that note, we'd like to thank you and also our partner, Arena Holdings or the Herald newspaper, for always partnering with us on such matters. Everybody, have a great day and really thank you very much.